Well, my task here is to demystify the budget, which I find very daunting because the highlights of the budget took, I think, 2 hours and 10 minutes for the finance minister to announce. And I am planning to explain it to you in about 2 or 3 minutes. But let's get to the bottom line. As an individual, you clearly stand to gain. There are increases in exemption limits for taxes, greater ATC benefits, which means that you get to save taxes by investing more in things like the Public Provident Fund. There is a tax break on the interest that you pay on your housing loans. So from that perspective, we should be happy. Some products have seen a decline in excise duties, like soaps, for instance. So that should help you. If you're a smoker or like your occasional drink, then you are somewhat badly off, because some of the losses that the minister has borne by announcing these excise duty cuts have been compensated by an increase in these so-called sin taxes, cigarettes and alcohol and so on. So that's where you tend to lose. But the budget is not just about the minor individual benefits that you might get from changes in the tax code and so on. There are three things that I think, even as a layperson, not an economist or a banker, you should be looking for in a budget or a policy statement of this kind. One, is it helping the economy's growth and consequently improving employment opportunities? You might be aware of the fact that the economy has been in the doldrums for a while now. Is it doing anything about inflation? And that's something that hits you directly. And finally, is it creating a lot of debt for the government, which ultimately you or your kids as taxpayers will have to service and finance? On that front, I think the budget is a bit of a mixed picture. Why? It does talk about a lot of things that the government or the finance minister plans to do, but there are no concrete proposals. For instance, I think it's a known fact that untargeted subsidies are a big drag on the economy and the country's exchequer. But there is nothing specific to handle this, although there is a commitment to revamp this altogether sometime in the future. There is an expenditure commission which is being set up to prune unnecessary expenditure, but there again, there is a lack of detail. So that might disappoint you a little. Does it do enough to prop up growth and employment? I am not too sure. There are certain measures that are somewhat direct and helpful, but I think getting growth back on track is a much bigger challenge, which involves things like changes in labor laws, in the way factories are regulated through the Factories Act. None of this got a mention in the budget. Clearly, one thing that the finance minister believes in, and this is a good thing, is that what economists technically call fiscal consolidation, which simply, from the perspective of a householder, is balancing your books, not borrowing too much. I think that gets enough emphasis. So you shouldn't be too worried about a large, debt burden that the government is sitting on, that you will ultimately have to finance through higher taxes. And that is a commitment that Mr. Chidambaram had made, and Mr. Jaitley has very, very directly committed to carrying on with that process of fiscal consolidation. That is good news from various perspectives. One, as I said, that the debt burden that you or your kids have to finance in the long term is not spinning out of control. There is, a close relationship between a large government deficit, a mismatch between expenditure and receipts, and the build-up of inflation. So if you, the fact that the finance minister has kept this under control means that he is trying to tame inflation pressures in some way. And finally, I think keeping the government's finances under check and under control creates a conducive environment for growth and for interest rates. And so, as a borrower, you might just see some help on the interest rate front coming from the fact the government is still committed to keeping its deficit or its spending revenue gap low. That's it from me. Thank you.